Justin Gaethje versus Max Holloway is an easy money fight in my opinion, and in this video I'm going to lay out my case as to exactly why I think that's true. Now, as always, there's going to be different segments to this video, so if you want to skip around or if you want to see what those are, they're all listed down in the progress bar. The first thing I want to talk about, though, are my frustrations with this fight in general. I was going to make a second video all about this topic, but I just don't know if there's enough substance there, so I'm going to shove it into this one. This fight drives me crazy for several reasons. Yes, I fully agree it is going to be a fun fight, and I'm very much looking forward to it. But I just can't get over how pointless this fight is overall, and it has thrown a wrench in two different divisions. If this fight wasn't happening right now, we would be scheduling Islam Makhachev versus Justin Gaethje because he is the #1 contender, and he is the rightful person to take that shot next. At the same time, we would be all excited for Ilia Topuria versus Max Holloway, and the only thing we would be figuring out is when and where, because both of those guys would have been absolutely ready by now. And if there's one thing that we can be pretty sure of in this fight is that both guys are going to get pretty busted up. And that likely means another fight for either one of them won't be possible until much later this year or even next year. So what we end up with is that Islam Makhachev has no opponent, because we also have to see what happens with Charles Oliveira and Arman Tsarukyan. And Ilia Topuria doesn't have a clear challenger either. On top of all that, even if Max Holloway manages to get through Justin Gaethje, does anyone actually believe his style would be a good matchup for Islam? If that's even the next fight they give him. And if he doesn't get an immediate title shot, the road ahead is just so difficult at 155. And if Justin Gaethje loses here, he pretty much loses everything. He won't get the title shot that he's a shoo-in for right now. He'd probably find himself back in a situation like when he had to fight Fiziev. And overall, it would just be such a damaging loss for him. So while this fight is a lot of fun and I'm definitely looking forward to seeing it at this point, it just makes no sense and it screws up so much. I really wish we had the alternative scenario where Justin Gaethje and Max Holloway were both next in line for the titles in their own divisions. But with all those gripes out of the way, let's get into the main reasons I'm making this video, which is to say if you're betting on Justin Gaethje, I think this is an easy money fight. Now, obviously, I'm not giving you gambling advice, and you do that at your own risk, but that's my opinion. So to back that up, we're going to take a look at both guys, their strengths and their weaknesses, what I think the keys to victory for each person will be, and I'll wrap it all up with my final predictions and the betting opportunities that I think are most attractive. So let's first start off with Max Holloway, go over his strengths and weaknesses and what I think would be his keys to victory in this fight. First and foremost, obviously Max is skilled everywhere. He's good on the ground, he's good on the feet, but it's obvious that he's much more of a stand-up fighter than he is a ground fighter. And while I think he would be in severe trouble on the ground game when it comes to somebody like Islam Makhachev, I don't think that's going to be much of an issue in this fight with Justin. Another strength for Max is his inhuman durability. The guy can take an insane amount of damage and still keep going. And along with that, Max has very proven cardio and he's been 5-round tested many times. So when I look at Max's primary strengths when it comes to this fight, they mostly have to do with his ability to keep fighting and to take damage. But while Max is able to take a lot of damage and keep going, I also see that as a weakness in this fight because Justin Gaethje is one of the kings of delivering damage to his opponents. Max has been in a lot of wars and he's taken a lot of damage over his career. We don't know at what point that's going to crack. And if there is a person to crack it, I think it's going to be Justin Gaethje. I think that Max just relies a little too heavily on his durability, and that's always dangerous when you're fighting somebody like Justin Gaethje. In addition to that, I don't really see Max being the guy who can dish out a lot of heavy damage himself. He tends to hurt his opponents cumulatively over a long span of time, and he's just not known as the guy who goes out and finishes guys quickly, unlike Justin Gaethje. In fact, Max Holloway hasn't finished anybody in 6 years since 2018. So when it comes down to Max Holloway's keys to victory, I think there are several things that he needs to try to do in this fight. First and foremost, he needs to avoid the leg damage, especially early on in the fight, because we know Justin is going to be going for his legs. In addition to that, Max would be smart to utilize his speed and distance control to try to do what he does best and just add up cumulative damage. As tough as Max is, I don't know if he can stand 5 rounds of punishment from Justin Gaethje if he doesn't do a good job of managing that damage early in the fight. Could he take 2 or possibly even 3 hard rounds with him that way? Maybe, but it's hard to imagine taking 5. So I think overall the absolute best game plan for Max Holloway in this fight is to manage distance, avoid taking damage especially early in the fight, and aim for a win on points over 5 rounds. Now, if we switch over to Justin Gaethje and look at his strengths and weaknesses, overall, I think they're very different from those of Max. Justin is obviously known for his heavy power. He's also known for having that gritty toughness that he used to over-rely on in a lot of his fights and that got him in trouble. Justin Gaethje has some of the most vicious leg kicks in the game. He trains at altitude, which means his cardio should be in good shape. And perhaps most importantly of all, Justin Gaethje has adopted a much smarter fighting style over his last couple of fights, where he continues to be the scary guy that everybody knows, but he does so much more efficiently, and while taking a lot less damage himself, which is very important. But if we turn to his weaknesses, there are definitely some things to be concerned about. Justin Gaethje has been broken in multiple fights before, where he basically gets exhausted and worn out and he succumbs to the damage. It happened to him against Eddie Alvarez, it happened to him against Dustin Poirier, and most recently against Charles Oliveira. And when you watch those fights, he was just being reckless, staying in the pocket, exhausting himself. And that's something he really needs to avoid in this fight, because Max is the kind of guy who could take advantage of that if it came to it. When it comes to the ground game, obviously Justin has good wrestling accolades, although he doesn't really use them in MMA very much. But he has proven himself to be susceptible to submissions, so he needs to be careful in this fight, especially if he gets exhausted and somehow it ends up on the ground. That's definitely something Max is going to look to take advantage of. When it comes to endurance, this is certainly an area of concern for Justin Gaethje. He's only gone past the third round in his entire career one time, and that was against Tony Ferguson. Once again, hopefully that altitude training will help with this, but we just don't know. We don't have enough to look back on and say that he can go 5 rounds confidently. And the final weakness I would put out there is that Justin has been inconsistent over his career. He has times when he comes out and looks like an absolute killer and unbeatable, and then he has other times where he just seems to break and succumb to whatever the other guy is throwing at him. Now, hopefully that has been remedied by his new style and his new approach, but we've only really seen that 2 times so far, so it remains to be seen if he's going to be able to keep that together. Now, in terms of Justin's keys to victory in this fight, I think obviously attacking Max's legs and reducing that mobility early on is going to be really important. From there, if he continues with his recently adopted style of efficient boxing, he'll be able to add up a lot of damage on Max's face, all while avoiding a lot of damage on his end. Justin also needs to be patient and make sure he sticks with his game plan, which should include smart energy management on his part, because he's not proven in 5 rounds, at least not in actual competition. And I think the overall goal for him should be to accumulate enough damage on Max that he can put him away in the 4th or the 5th round, or at least win a very lopsided decision. I could very much see this fight ending due to some kind of a doctor stoppage due to the damage that he puts on Max late in the fight, but all of that is going to depend on how he comes out and what game plan he utilizes. So let's dive in now to my final predictions for this fight, and we'll take a look at some of the betting odds and some ideas there. I feel like overall this should be a relatively easy win for Justin Gaethje. I know that Max is tough and I know that Max is durable, but I don't see a lot of the areas where Max really presents a threat to Justin unless Justin has a poor game plan or executes a good game plan poorly. So I think that Justin at a minus 225 is a pretty fair bet to take on a straight up win. I think if we were to look at the most likely way that this fight ends, I'd probably have to say that the most likely outcome is a decision. And that is based purely on Max's toughness and ability to absorb damage and his proven ability to do that over long fights. Now, if you feel that way as well, one of the attractive bets to look at is Justin Gaethje by decision, which will pay you about 2.5 to 1 if it turns out that way. Now, there are some other bet opportunities that I think will be interesting, and there's a couple that I am looking at. When you think about the most likely outcome for a later finish to this fight that's not a decision, rounds 4 and 5 are definitely the most likely in my opinion. So regardless of whether you think Justin's going to win or Max is going to win, in both cases, choosing either fighter by finish in round 4 or 5 brings exceptionally good odds, with the worst of which being 12 to 1 for Justin Gaethje to win in round 4. And if you think Max is going to pull it off late, you're talking 45 to 1 for Max to win in round 4. So in my case, if I think Justin Gaethje is likely to win by either decision or a late stoppage, I could go a little heavier there, but then do a hedge offset on Max in the event that some surprise event happens. And it wouldn't take a lot of money to do that. Unless some sort of a fluke happens, I just don't see Max having the power to put Justin Gaethje away before the 4th round. And while Justin Gaethje definitely does have the power to put Max away earlier than the 4th round, I think Max definitely has a high probability of making it there. So there you have it, folks. That's my breakdown of Justin Gaethje versus Max Holloway and some of the bets that I think are attractive to look at. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel for the future. Once again, I really appreciate it when you do that. It means a lot, and it motivates me to bring you more content like this going forward. Also, be sure down in the comments to let me know what you think about this fight. Who do you think's going to win? What round? What method? I'd love to see all of your opinions. With that said, I hope all of you have a great rest of your day, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.